Good evening. This is the Elliott Wave daily update for the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ 100 for Monday, June the 24th, 2024. Markets did continue to react more to the beginning of a corrective process within NVIDIA, within Broadcom, within many of the high-flying stocks that kind of took us up to those highs, up to the high. I'm going to just kind of point it out right at 55.88, which would have been last week. Now, still, I have labeled that as as 3. Excuse me. I did roll that and change that. So over the weekend, I had presented it as 5. I revised that and put 1, 2, 3, particularly because the market is not coming off in 5. It is better going to be counted out as an ABC, which puts it into the 4, which I did discuss on the updates or the podcast that I put up over the weekend. So with that in mind, I have labeled that top as a sub-minuet wave 3. So we're still within the minuet wave 5. And within that, we are putting in a sub-minuet wave 4. Now the fibs, being that we have A and I believe B, the fibs come in pretty clean. C would be equal to A, most common, at 54.95. So we got a little bit more to go on to the downside. We got down to 55, let's just call it what it is, 55.10. And so we're really looking for an additional 15 points to where it's 100%. So we're below the 0.236 as far as that for a fourth wave, but I'm leaving it in there right now as it will continue to provide some resistance to the upside and until we come down and complete it. So we have 54.95, 50, and then 54.82. And those are the two levels that I believe now. If this kind of goes more full bore and we get a little bit harder selling tomorrow, then we have the possibility that wave C would be 1.618 of wave A, and that comes in at 54.56, 54.55. So, and that, in my opinion, would then complete this sub-minuet wave 4, setting the stage for a continued rally. That seems to feed the undertone that we're seeing in the market. And in fact, today, we saw the Dow and the Russell move higher. And the Russell actually picking up a little bit more strength, although the Dow at one point was up over 300, settled back down a little bit, but then continues to move. Within the high-flying stocks, we continue to see that Apple remains active and being bought up. What really kicked the butt, and we'll talk about that a little bit more within the NASDAQ, but kicked the butt of both because also within the S&P, we have SMCI, which was added just recently, and then we also have NVIDIA. So SMC and NVIDIA was down 8, and after hours is now trading below 117. So that's going to continue to have a drag on it, not only the NASDAQ, but also the S&P. So if I just kind of drive a little bit further on this, see if I can't open this up, and just take a look at what SMCI was doing. And it is also moving down. It's quoted down 6 from the close, 5 if you go to the offer. So both still continuing to move. And then we have Broadcom also continuing to head lower after we get that extra hour, but even after and before we reopen in Globex, they're continuing to move lower. They will trade for an additional up until 8 o'clock Eastern, and then they shut, and then they reopen once the European markets open. Then the equity markets here, the stocks, reopen as well. So right now they are continuing to pull lower. So I'm feeling that we're going to get a little bit more downside here. Potential would be into this zone Ultimately, though, it could drop into this zone. We get a 4. Now, here's the catch. I'm having, this is very messy. This is a complete mess in my view, in terms of a impulse move. Impulse moves are usually pretty clean in terms you're able to see the 5. Well, you're able to see 5. It can get a little bit messy in a little bit of the internal corrective phases. But if this was a 1 and this was a 2 and we're starting down in a 3, this just doesn't sit well with me in terms of how it all unfolded in a bunch of 3s and so, and that's in both markets, by the way, the S&P and the NASDAQ. So the best I'm leaving it right now is an AB, looking for a C, put a 4, expect one more rally. Now, lots of things can happen between now and when this actually shows up, if it were to show up. So I'm just keeping an open mind to the fact that even though I've switched and put the 3 up here and I'm looking for a 4, if I have and we need, then it's a 3 and a 4, and that still would be a 5, but the market needs to make that abundantly clear. And right now, it truly is not. Right now, it's just a matter of we're getting a few of that high flyers, particularly the number 1, which was NVIDIA. The talk was NVIDIA, NVIDIA this, NVIDIA that. But now let me just show you. Let me see if it's still out there. Here is the volume in NVIDIA as of right now, which is still trading. 471 million shares of NVIDIA have traded today. 471 million. So there is a big change of hands here. And I discussed that actually with, with this, all of this hype and the split. And so I thought, okay, here we're going to go. We're going to have this big, humongous expiration last Friday, which it was, and how much actually settled. And we see, so folks have got all this now 10 for 1 split. So what if you had what you thought you had, now you got 10 times as much, and the stock is getting pounded. So we saw a lot of like getting out, but also a lot of it tied to options. The options flow were incredible today within NVIDIA. Not so uncommon. And in terms of where the market has come from, it rejected that 140 level. It rejected it more than once, and it dropped quickly. So whether people were really looking and expecting, or they were thinking that they were going to accept more stock through an expiration on Friday and then realized they didn't want it. So then you just start getting out, and that's what we have been seeing all along. Now, doesn't mean that it could just stop and then we see the flood coming back in. I don't know, but I just find it kind of astounding that this high-flying stock, as we now move towards the end of the second quarter, as we now have day 1 of what could end up being window dressing for this week, right? We have asset managers, portfolio managers making adjustments to their portfolios in anticipation of where they want to end up and what they want to look like coming into Friday's end of the second quarter. And then they make their reports out to their customers and to their clients. So if they're really heavy in NVIDIA, do you want to end the quarter that way with a stock that's now dropping down? Or do you want to trim some of it down? Do you want to move it around? Do you want to switch it up? Again, I'm not a portfolio manager, so I don't know. But I'm saying these are the possibilities of what we're seeing and how that all fits into the scheme of things. Now, I had already determined that NVIDIA really looked like it needed to pull back right to about where it's getting right now, 116. 116. The post-split price, I believe, was 112, 113. So we're back to that area, which should actually provide some pretty strong support. We start breaking down there, then we're actually now flushing out any of the new longs. And people may want to decide, I am going to take more profit. In fact, it's like if they picked up a bunch of stock once the split happened, but they were long that stock from way below, say from 900 or 950 pre-split. You know, do they want to start getting that profit booked? And my answer, I thought, would be yes. So again, we still are seeing, well, because NVIDIA is not in the Dow, NVIDIA is not in the Russell 2000. So here we have a little bit of a different picture. So again, let's see how it kind of balances itself out, because I would imagine that if NVIDIA is done with the window dressing or so, whatever, and we get down and we finish this and we can put a 4 under it and then get a more discernible impulse type move, because we'd be looking for a 5th wave up, but it will form its own 5 waves. So again, one more run, and then that would put a nice cleaner cap towards the end of the week to that minor third that I'm looking. So we have the sub minuet wave 5, the minuet wave 5, the minute wave 5, the minor third. And then we put in that little bit larger, which I also discussed over the weekend. Moving average wise, hourly chart, we're now hanging out and right at the hourly 200. Everything else, let me just kind of go up one, and let's take a look at that daily. And we can see here, not much damage being done to the 50 period and the 200 period moving average. They're kind of going, angling ever so slightly higher still, which is supportive of the market finding a low, putting a 4, and then rallying again. So daily, when we take a look at the 13 and the 20, they've not been challenged yet. So while we have basically now 3 days of red, it's not putting a heavy burden on the flip that we might think we're going to see in the moving averages, particularly the 20, and then of course the 50. 50 still way below 53, 58. So well out of danger, as long as these levels were to hold, and it really is an ABC, and we're going to put a 4 down there. Otherwise, we will be paying very close attention to the market to just ensure it's like, well, what are you doing? And if we start to get that's 1, 2, and now we start to drop very precipitously now, because if it's a third, that's what we'd be looking for, right? 1 of the new move down, 2 of the new move down, and we're dropping in a third. It's not as clear if I take it down and even look at the 4-hour chart and go like that. It's like, see, now we get the mess. We get a mess in here. So this is a 1 and this is all ugly, but it's a 2? We will find out pretty quickly, because this could form 5, but if it forms a hard 5 and goes blowing through all of what we would consider support, we're going to take the hint. We're going to look at it much differently. But right now, it is a mess in here. And the market does look like it might still have an additional leg up. And we right today on a 4-hour chart, we broke but closed back at the 4-hour 50. And it didn't really pick up and drop strongly below once the break happened, below the 4-hour 50. So all in all, I'm going to leave it as it is, but I'm also going to be paying attention. I'm going to be paying very close attention to how this all is going to come off. So while we're in that waiting period, we have to indulge each other, to be honest with you, on how and what gets labeled. And yes, things get moved around. This is a whole move in motion. It's happening. So every day I'm trying to fill in a blank as to, well, what did it today produce? If we're still counting this upside, I moved it because it appeared that it was not done, because this was not forming a more of a stronger impulse, which I would expect for a high of as big as this high will be. This is new, uncharted water, all-time highs in this index. So to suspect that it's going to come off by rejecting these levels more than coming down and then going sideways. Now, granted, it could be 1, 2, like I said. We're leaving this all for the market to tell us, as it always does. All right, so for tomorrow, S&P, I would expect some follow through to the downside. Here's our support. If it gets a full blown down to there, if it breaks through that and it starts heading for this, that's going to be a stronger move. That's going to be major in terms of giving us information. What it can't do, it cannot break here. If I'm labeling that as wave 1, it can't break it. Cannot enter into that price area because then it's not a 4. Then it would likely be. But I'm hoping that the market's going to give us enough evidence before that were to happen that the 5s are in and everything is now working towards that next minor wave 4. Right now, still on the sidelines. All right. Over in the NASDAQ, it's also just really sloppy. It truly, truly is. Now, a little bit easier to trade today, but we did have a lot of sideways. We had a lot of just kind of chop, where it kind of chop up, chop down, chop up, chop down, as they were moving in and out of NVIDIA, as they were moving into Meta, as, some of the other stocks that were like, at times, Tesla was moving all over the place. Apple was up much higher than this. There was at one point Apple was up over close to $3 and it just gave it all back. So again, the inflow of capital continues and possibly was transferring out of NVIDIA, putting it back into Apple, we're watching this window dressing. That's what they call this whole period, right? Window dressing. How do you want your sheets to go out and then your report to go out to your customers at the end of the second quarter in preparation for a third quarter and to what they expect? This is how the business goes. So here in the NASDAQ, same type of a deal. This central part, it is one big mess. And I have to tell you, the fact that we had yesterday and then today did not really bring strong clarity. So I'm here on the 1 hour chart. Again, same here. I moved this to 3 and the 4, and this was the 5. I switched it, brought it up. So this is all internal now. But I put the sub-minuet wave 3, which puts that third wave to be pretty large, even on a sub-minuet level, but not impossible. And now coming off still in the sub-minuet wave 4. So I have the wave A, which does, you can kind of look at it on a lower level. Nice clean. It is clean until we start doing this. So the best I can do is go at A, B, and then 1, 2, 1, 2. And now we're coming off in a third, maybe down to here. Coming up in a 4, we come back down in a 5, and then be done with this ABC down, and that it becomes wave 4. And I believe there's probably some WXY in here that we could probably work out. This kind of gives you that Y type of a pattern. And that's also possible. It depends on which you use to count these corrective moves. I think that it could be a double ABC. I'm trying to work it so that it's just a single ABC, but it definitely could be a double. And it's messy. It is messy. And this is an hourly chart. So that's why I'm switching, putting the 3 up to here. It's like, nah, we should have one more leg. This doesn't appear done because it's not impulsive enough. These levels get rejected. That was a beautiful rejection, but then suddenly it stopped. It just stopped and they chopped around. And I was thinking, okay, we're done with that big expiration that we had last Friday. Let's see if that doesn't kind of solve a few things. Well, in a way it did. We're seeing this big switch happening in NVIDIA. So it's not like we're not seeing the market make its adjustments. And, the thing that also, I don't want to get into the options discussion that deeply because there's many many subscribers here that they don't have an interest, and to start throwing out options flows and gamma and delta, etc., it's not going to clarify the picture for them. So I don't definitely want to go into it, but it does have a lot to say about what we are seeing, and the fact that we got a big release because of the expiration on Friday, and how that does start to affect with volatility possibly ticking up. Well, we saw that initially, then they kind of moved in and sold a little bit, and we're going to see how this all works out, because higher vol would naturally start to throw the market lower. And so we're seeing that. Now let's just see if it comes through to its completion point. So again, if we're still in that sub minuet wave 4, it kind of projects down. Now we got a nice point here because we have the C wave plus the Fib 4 wave 4 at 382, which is the most common. So I got two nice little points right here that overlap and basically are at the same level. And that level is 19,650. 56, 57. So right now they're both right there. I'm going to say 57 because they got the change right there. So it's 19,657. 660 down to 655. Well, anywhere in this zone would complete it. Now, we're not that far away from it. So basically, we're 100 points. 100 points, and then we would be hitting it here. Now, if it really starts to get blasted a little bit harder tomorrow, and that could be NVIDIA, that could be any of you, pick the ones that drove the market higher, they're now bringing the market back down. So we'll see. But again, if they kind of come through this, they group up together at the 50% on the retracement, and 1.618, where wave C would equal 1.618 of wave A, and that's at 19,435 to 404. A little bit bigger window down here at this level, where we could get down to 19,400, possibly. Where can it not go past? All the way. It's way back here, 19,014. Let's give it exact. 19,014. Yeah, it was exact. It cannot invade, exceed, or move into the price territory of wave 1 and still be considered a wave 5. Excuse me, a wave 4. And the primary reason is, folks, it's correcting wave 3. If you correct all of wave 3, no, then it's not trying to correct it. So most common is 382. So it's right up here. So it's not a whole lot more where we might finish and then start to rally back. Once that is in, I will again replace our wave 1 to wave 4 to give us our levels up. But ultimately, if indeed it is a 4 and we start to rise up in a 5, we're going to be looking for it to get above 20,371. That's that high. And I think even here, I would have, if I put it, we're right there, I have a levels of 20,400 and some change. I know doing my Fribs wave 5 to wave 1. 1.618, everything is 20,450, let's say, which is enough. And we'd be looking for 5 waves up, and we look for it to be more impulsive than sideways. So let's take a look here on our hourly moving averages. We broke the hourly 200 and we slid further. That's what we look for. Now what happened? We got the 13 and we got the 20 down below. So essentially on an hourly basis, as soon as the 50 comes down, and if it were to break here, it should produce a much more negative picture for the NASDAQ on an hourly basis. So I'm not necessarily looking for that right now. I'd like it to come down, finish, move, get those guys back up, get that turning up, and get themselves back in alignment for an upside move to complete. So that's kind of what I'm looking at there. Let's take it out to the daily chart just to take a look as to what it looks like. See, again, not bad. Flat and flat, but here it basically just came down and is sitting right at the daily 13 period. Remember, I combined the 4 and the 8, kind of come up with 13, because I like fib numbers. So 13 period and then the 20 period, just kind of going flat. And excuse me, and if it moves down and holds here, it's not challenging the 20. So on a daily, looking good. So on the daily, yeah, it's turning a little bit negative, but moving average wise, it's not. So that's why, again, I think it could be a 4, and then we're going to turn and move up and go higher. Now let's take a quick look at what I think we got a couple of things coming out tomorrow. We have consumer confidence at 10 a.m. That's it. We have a Fed governor speaking at 7 a.m. We have, the S&P Case-Shiller Home Price Index, which used to have a little bit of an effect. Don't know if it will. That comes out at 9. Consumer confidence at 10, and Fed Governor Lisa Cook giving a speech at 12 noon. And that, my friends, completes it for today. Our next update will be on Tuesday, June the 25th.